Up next, we have Grifter. We are incredibly excited to have Grifter speak. Yeah, I am. Please hang out. We're going to go ahead and mute everybody. If you have questions, save them till the end, and we'll give you the option to raise your hand. But with that, Grifter, the stage is yours.
Thank you. So I am going to do this with my Oculus Quest on and try to do it all like you guys are doing it, wearing headsets. So this should be a magnificent shit show. So hi, thanks for coming. I hope that you're not expecting to learn a bunch of stuff. This is basically just going to be story time with Old Man Grifter. I'll tell you a few things about me. Let's see if I can advance the slide with a headset on. Oh, do it. This is a house of lies. Oh, there we go. All right, so who am I? So my name is Neil Wyler. Everybody knows me as Grifter, though. I've been part of the community for a really long time, since the BBS days. And by day, I work for RSA as a principal threat hunter. And by night, I run all the technical operations for the Black Hat Security Briefings. And I'm also one of the main organizers of DEF CON. I am the department lead for contest events in the demo lab. So that picture in the center is actually me in the NOC at Black Hat. So I'll often have news agencies come in and want to do interviews like the BBC or CNN and that kind of thing. So when they're coming in, I dress up in a wizard robe and hat and a power glove and show them who it is they're about to be talking to. I take it off for the interview, but you know what I'm saying. But yeah, so that's me in a nutshell. Let's see. Please, slide, move forward. All right, one sec. Did it do it? All right, so what's the difference between a NOC and a SOC? So they are different things. So while I am at Black Hat, I run the Black Hat NOC. When I'm at RSA Conference, I run the RSA Conference SOC. They are different things because they have different goals, and the goals are this. Like so for the Black Hat, for the RSA SOC, it's really just an educational expo, right? Like we're really just like setting things up to All right, how's that? Are we back? Yay! Okay, cool. All right, so when we're doing the RSA conference talk, we're just getting a span. We have no control over the network infrastructure. We just get it from Moscone. They say, here you go. We mirror the traffic, and then we look through it. We're doing packet analysis and malware analysis. If we see something that looks interesting that gets flagged as potential malware, we then throw it to a Cisco Threat Grid malware sandbox, detonate it, and interact with it and see what it does, right? It's really just about educating the attendees. There's not a lot that we can do as far as mitigation if we see an actual attack going on. And that's just something that we have to deal with because we're using the venue's, stuff, basically their equipment. And that's about the extent that they want us to do it. Oh, did I skip a slide? I think I did. Let me go back. Yes, and so the difference with the Black Hat NOC is that the Black Hat NOC, we control all of it. When we arrive on site in Vegas at the Mandalay Bay, or Marina Bay Sands in Singapore, or the Excel Center in London, we we take out all of their equipment from the equation. We replace every router, every switch, all of it with our own equipment. Literally the only thing that we're using is the wires that are in the wall. So, and the reason that we do that is because, one, I'm a control freak, and also because we want to make sure that if something fails and it has my name on it, that I'm responsible for it. We have had a network failure in the past, and it literally was due to the wire in the wall, which super pissed me off. So we try to do as much as we can with Black Hat to try to make the attendees have a better experience or a safer experience than they can at RSA Conference. And I know you hear a lot of stuff about how insane conference networks are and everything, but in some cases, when people leave the Black Hat network, they're more secure than when they arrived, and I'll tell you how that happened. Okay, let me jump to this. So how do we do that? We do that with partners. Here are our partners here. For Black Hat, it's Palo Alto for our core, Cisco for Threat Grid and Umbrella, RSA for our operational intelligence. So we do a full packet capture, logs, and endpoint on the registration machines. Then we also use RSA as our identity and access management tool there. Ruckus is the wireless. Gigamon is our tap, basically our mirror, and then CenturyLink for bandwidth. So and then some additional intelligence from CenturyLink as well. At RSA Conference, it's just RSA and Cisco right now. So. All right, so how did things change? When I first started doing the Black Hat network, it was the USA show of 2003. So I've been doing it, for a few years. When I got there, it was a very shaky network. It was down all the time for training classes and for the attendees. And so initially, when Jeff Moss approached me about taking over the network, he said, yeah, here's what we'd like to have happen, but it's never happened in the past. Came in the first year, and the network had gone down, so stability was at top of mind. And that first US show, the network went down for 15 minutes. And the reason that it did was I actually went and checked on a trainer, and I said, hey man, how's things going? And he said, oh, did the network go down a little bit ago? And I said, oh yeah, actually it did. And he's like, oh yeah, I was testing this O-Day I have on those Cisco access points you're using. And I was like, thanks bro, I appreciate that. So it would have stayed up, had it not been for one of the trainers who had found a vulnerability and it just hadn't been patched yet. So obviously, like security, which is almost laughable when you talk about going to a place like a Black Hat RSA conference or whatever, you're like security with a bunch of hackers on the network. But security was what we want to do next, right? How do we provide a layer of protection between the attendees? Initially, when I took over the network, it was flat. Everybody could see each other. It was absolute mayhem. And so we did some network segmentation between the classrooms and things, because what we had when I walked into it was the red team class attacking the blue team class and laughing all the way. So we decided to also, we needed some more intelligence around what was going on in the network, and we introduced threat hunting to it, and we brought in some guys to sit and spend the entirety of Black Hat just hunting with that full packet capture and log access that we had. And then eventually, because we were finding interesting malware, we wanted to see what it did. We moved to malware sandboxing. The identity and access management piece came because we, like I said, we have partners, and we have a partner who's no longer a partner, but they provided equipment for us and helped us with some things. And then one night they said, oh, we need to patch this, our equipment at Black Hat on a live network without informing, Grifter. And so they did, and it was bad. Showed up in the morning, and the update had broken the network, and it was down for about 2 hours, which is the longest outage that I've ever had in the almost 20 years I've been doing the Black Hat network. So then even the partners had to be essentially locked out of their own devices. The endpoint piece was just, again, registration machines. Obviously, you guys don't want to install anything like you log onto the network and get a captive portal, and it's like, welcome to the Black Hat network, install this thing. Like, you would never do that, right? So, but we can do that on the registration machines, and it lets us know if somebody's like, dropped something on there or whatever. And obviously the registration system is the keys to the kingdom for us. That's what we're trying to protect the most: the core backend stability, and then the registration network. And then we introduced a couple of years ago some automation, and here's why. So we were seeing a lot of clear text traffic, like clear text credentials coming across. We were seeing stuff where it was people would show up on the network and they were already owned, right? So they had malware on their machines, and they were communicating out to command and control infrastructure the moment they logged in. And so we could see that immediately. And so we were, like, what can we do about this? What we used to do, because of the way that we have the network carved up, is like, we'd say, okay, well, this particular subnet belongs to this training class. We see what we would deem, I don't know, bad traffic, right? Coming from that network. But at a place like Black Hat, it's about figuring out the bad within the bad. So we'd go and say, oh, it looks like this is happening. But then we go look at the class and be like, oh, it's a, like web app security class. Like they're doing a lab. It's not actually malicious. But we try to confirm whether or not it's bad. And then if it looked like it was bad, then I would basically trot my ass down to whatever classroom that was, go in and say, who has IP address, whatever, right? And then say, hey, come here. It looks like you have this type of traffic coming from your machine. And they're like, no, I don't, of course. And we're like, yes, you do. Here is the, packet capture that says it, because, PCAP, or it didn't happen, right? So, so we go down and let them know what was going on. In some cases, the clear text account credentials were just emails, right? People were sending clear text email. So we already had their creds, we had their email address and everything. And I'm like, well, we should just send them an email and say, hey, I have your email credentials. And so we did that on a smaller scale for a while. And then when it came to the crypto mining, I think we just let them know, like, hey, how do we tell somebody this is legitimate or not? And so what we do is we send them a captive portal pop up the next time they try to browse to something that it says exactly this, which is a warning from us. Here's what's going on. This is what we detected. And it allowed us to scale, because when I took over the Black Hat network in 2003, there were 1,200 attendees at the US show, and this last year there were 23,000, I think is what it was. So obviously that scale meant that I couldn't be running from training room to training room. I will say, I always called Black Hat my marathon because of how much I would run back and forth, letting people know what was going on. And one year I really did lose the toenails on both of my feet, my pinky toenails, because they had rubbed on my shoes so much from running back and forth over the course of several days at Black Hat. So Black Hat is my marathon. All right, so what the kind of things that we see? Well, this is the encrypted traffic, right? So what we're starting to see, and we've seen an uptick of about 5% year over year, which is really nice. And we're looking at, on average, 76%, 75% encrypted traffic within the US. And that is true as well at RSA Conference. It's also true in London, but in Asia, we would see roughly 90% to 90% plus encrypted traffic on the network. And I was really curious about that. And at a certain point, I was talking to somebody about those numbers and about those stats and how we saw significant encrypted traffic in Asia. And I said, why is that? Like, why do we see more encrypted traffic here than you think we do in the States or in London? And the individual said, well, when you say something bad about your government, nothing happens. And when we do, someone comes and gets us at night. And I was like, oh, yeah, that'll do it. We also see some of the browser stats there as far as our TLS versions, so significantly 1.2. We've seen major improvements over that over the years as well. Email security, I hate, when you convert things to slides.com, all your GIFs end up static images. So sad face, but email security wise, we have seen a much better or a much higher increase in secure email over the years, but we're still seeing literally hundreds of unique accounts show over show. I honestly feel like it's 2020. You must have to try to make your email insecure, but that's the reality. So this is from RSA Conference this year. So only, 2 months ago, or I don't even know. I don't know what day it is. I don't know what month it is. So this is a good example of the kind of clear text stuff that we're seeing. So 93,000 or 96,361 clear text passwords, over 2,178 unique accounts just on open Wi-Fi, right? So they're just communicating on the Wi-Fi, just leaking credentials everywhere. This image that's over here is actually made of the passwords that we saw on the network at RSA Conference this year. So I don't know, I found some site where you could make an image out of text in the shape of, I think that's the save icon. So, but yeah, so those are actual passwords. What we were doing was, it's not really a wall of sheep, but you can see that in here, there's like the bright red are very strong passwords. And then like how long they would take to crack, the protocol that they are. So this is IMAP2, we've got a lot of POP3, HTTP, stuff like that. But we've got very strong passwords. Uppercase and lowercase and special characters and significant lengths and all those things, except, they're passing them across the network in the clear, so it doesn't freaking matter. It's like, well, good try, solid effort. All right, so story time. Like I said, you will learn nothing, but hopefully you'll get some chuckles. All right, so we got to eat some of our own dog food here, at least a little bit. I think it's pretty funny because this is something that we saw on the network at Black Hat USA this year. So UBM or Informa or whoever owns Black Hat right now, they hired an outside security company to do like physical security and make sure things, whatever. This is the first time in 23 years that they have done this. But they were like, oh, we're going to hire this group. It's just the head of their security, his email was insecure, and he was sending stuff out over the network in the clear. And we were like, dude, you got to realize where you are. And he just couldn't get past it. Like we tried to show him how to secure stuff. We're like, you got to take care of this. You can't be doing this. Still couldn't do it. What I like about this one is that he says, also never plug a USB from an unknown source, blah, blah, blah. But then he says, they hack anything and everything, not maliciously, but for the fun of it. We don't need this distraction in security. And I lulls. But yeah, and so what he sent, what these screenshots are actually pictures from a document that he sent. You can see it says confidential. Yeah. Really working on that one. This shows the color and layout of the shirts that the staff would be wearing, the helpers like around that are giving directions and stuff. And then all of the badge colors and their meaning and all whatever just sent over the network in the clear. So, yay us. All right, so this is at the London show this December. What we saw was, again, clear text traffic coming across, and there was an email where somebody had booked a trip to go on the London Eye, right? So they were like, oh, I'm going to do some tourism. And in that email, there was actually the QR codes that needed to be scanned when you went up to the London Eye to get on. So we had a couple of tickets that were in there with the QR codes. If we wanted to, we could have just gone before they did and got on, and man, it's something crazy like 40 pounds or 30 or 40 pounds to go on the London Eye. So we could have snagged their tickets and did some sightseeing had we wanted to. So that's some of this stuff that's floating around on the network. So speaking of tickets, here's another thing that we saw where somebody had gotten some emails from Southwest, like talking about their flight. except that the information that's included within the email is enough information that you could go in and start making changes to the flight for them. So we could have said, oh, all right, well, we actually don't want to leave when we're scheduled to. I want to leave in 3 days. So so yeah, we were like, oh, you're staying. So yeah, awesome. Okay. This one I just affectionately call the inbox of doom. Again, clear text stuff going across the network. And when we're talking about, we see interesting things in email, but beyond just email. And again, if you lose your email password, like that is, it's probably the most important password you have, right? Because when you forget your password, you click on I forgot my password and off you go. But this one was somebody's like corporate email. But you can see they're really, really good about organizing and setting up filters because they've got a metric ass load of them over here. And here's just a sampling of what some of those are. You can see it's like personal security, Belize passport, all whatever. There was a lot of identifiable stuff in here, people's names, companies, stuff about their mortgage, other stuff like that. That would allow you, if you were to want to social engineer them, to come up with basically the most incredible bulletproof pretext that you could possibly craft, right? Just this list of folders is so extensive that you could tell them everything about what was going on. And they got, and you're like, oh, well, how did you get my number? Blah, blah, blah. We had 10 different names we could have used, company associations, that kind of thing. So, so you got to be really careful with just, again, making sure you're doing the right things and keeping your shit together, basically. I'm just gonna say. All right. So, yay, cats. We applaud for cats. So this was something that we saw at RSA Conference this year. It was really kind of a shock to us. You can actually read the text messages here. And what it was that there is a major cellular provider that when individuals are connecting to the network and it switches to using Wi-Fi for their communications, their text messages are in the clear. So we, when we find stuff like that, we contact whoever the offending organization is, and then they figure out how to fix it, right? So you can see there's a few things in there. I hope y'all had good evenings. I'm at M West, Moscone West, eating breakfast, and then makes sense to pace yourself, Mary. You have done a lot of walking. I was worried about Mary. That's sweet. But again, just things that you should be aware of, and you won't know unless you go and look and see what it is that you're sending out across the network. I'm sure most people believe that their cell phone provider is doing all the things they need to do to make sure that stuff is secure end to end, and in a lot of, I shouldn't say in a lot of cases. In some cases, that's not true, and the same is true of applications. When people get on the Play Store or the App Store and they download something, they have some kind of belief that, oh yeah, this has been vetted in some way before they could put it up here, and we're seeing that is not true as well. And so I highly, highly encourage you to sniff your own networks and see what your applications are doing. All right, so this was one from Black Hat USA. At Black Hat USA this year, we're watching the traffic, we're seeing stuff come across. And what we do from a malware analysis standpoint as well is basically like if PDFs and things like that come across the network in the clear, we dump them into the sandbox and we just see if anything happens when you open it. In this case, when we were watching Threat Grid and seeing stuff goes by, I was like, is that the Wells Fargo? What's going on there? So we pulled it up, took a look at it, and it was somebody was sending across the Black Hat network essentially their entire financial history This is only one of the documents that they sent, and this one was relating to their mortgage and their bank statements and that kind of stuff, right? So they were sending this stuff across the network in the clear, and this was one where I was like, okay, this guy deserves more than just a captive portal. I'm going to walk down there and see if I can go talk to him. So I looked up what class it was, walked down to the classroom, said, hey, you are not sending stuff encrypted across this network. You are sending everything you have in the clear, and it's a lot of stuff. And as is often the case when you're somewhere like Black Hat or RSA Conference, I got the, do you know how long I've been in security? I know what I'm doing. I am connected to a VPN. And I said, man, I assure you that you are not. And he was like, no, man, I like seriously, like I'm connected to a VPN right now. And I said, all right, well, you have $93,000 left on your mortgage. And he was like, wait, what? And so he was like, no, dude, I swear, man, I'm connected to a VPN. And he's like, I'll show you. And he took me over to his machine. And he did. He pointed to the corner of the machine, and it said that the VPN was connected. And I said, can I take a look at it? And he had set up split tunneling, and he thought that everything that he was sending out over his VPN was secure, but only the corporate stuff was being encrypted, not the stuff that he was sending personally. I also was like, dude, what? Like, why would you send all that stuff off the network while you're here at Black Hat anyway? And he was like, well, my son's going to university in a couple of weeks, and this is for his financial aid stuff. And I said, all right, well, you might also want to tell the school that the web interface that they're using isn't, using TLS either. So we could see, because you weren't connected to a VPN and because their website is accepting financial documents from everybody's parents who are attending that school, and it's all going in the clear. So, so that's the kind of stuff that we find, right? And we try to let people know and keep them informed about stuff like that. This is the RSA conference this year. We saw clear text credentials coming across the network. We took a look at what the individual was logging into, and it was a vendor who was out on the floor selling this, which is identity as a service. I particularly like that it says trusted right here above identity, because what they were logging into was an interface that showed all of their customers, and then we could click on any of these customers and see the information about all those organizations who were paying for this service. I also really like their password. Good job, guys. Once again, another vendor, another expo floor problem. You can see over here, it says that you can register, and what they're registering for is a data privacy and protection bootcamp. In the clear? But what about the privacy? I guess we'll find out about that later in the bootcamp. So, cool. I'm glad you're running a workshop on data privacy protection and that kind of stuff, but you kind of missed the mark there a little bit. Man, it really, I mean, when you come to a place like Black Hat or you go to RSA Conference, these are security conferences, right? So this is, the people who are there should know better, right? We should know better. Even if you're in sales or marketing or you are doing whatever, then you're part of a security organization. You should at least have, at a minimum, like the ability to secure your email or your creds, whatever. So this one, I like this one too. We saw a bunch of communications. This is a back and forth between another vendor and one of their customers about how they're going to meet up and do whatever. I'll just read it to you because it's really difficult to see from back there, I'm sure. It said, blah, 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 company whatever is committed to ensuring your data privacy. For more information, please visit our privacy notice to view so-and-so's commitment to the GDPR. Right, so cool story, bro. So yeah, they're trying. but it didn't quite work out. So let's see, next. You can see there's a theme coming from RSA Conference here, right? Which is the booths, security vendors, you know, buy your Blinky box from us. It will solve all the things. Oh man, this looks terrible on this slide. It looks a lot better in the PowerPoint. I noticed it got a little worse when when it converted to slides.com, but I'm sure I'll give these slides to you know, to Trenton and to put on the website or something like that. So, but what you're seeing here on the left-hand side is, I'll tell you a little something about the RSA conference network at Moscone that drove me absolutely crazy, is that when you get onto that network, it is a flat network with no host isolation. So when you get on that network with the 45,000 other people who show up at RSA conference, you can see them all. And good times are had, right? But what this meant was that we were seeing some interesting stuff coming across the network, and when we looked, what we have on the left-hand side here is the playlist for an incredibly large display at one of the vendors' booths that they had logged into with clear text credentials and were uploading the playlist, which was then pulled by whatever software was playing the videos over FTP. So they were uploading the playlist, making changes to it on the fly over FTP, which meant we could have changed this, right? So then we got interested and we said, well, how many of these different vendors are using these giant $100,000 or more displays in their booths and are sending stuff out insecure? So there are over 700 vendors at RSA conference. I know I'm going to say that again because it sounds absurd, but there are over 700 vendors at RSA conference. We were only able to find 76 insecure displays. So not bad, right? At one point, you know, the guys in the stock were like, oh my gosh, we should make a video of you and then push it to all of these displays where you say, hi, I'm Grifter. Let's talk about security. And the thing is, that's a joke, right? But honestly, if you were a competitor and you really, really wanted to embarrass, you know, one of the other vendors, taking over their booth and displaying whatever you want on their displays could lead to some really interesting press. And we all know that that can be pretty damaging to a brand. And then what we see on the right here was clear text credentials, again, for all of the booth infrastructure for one of the largest vendors and largest booths at RSA conference. And so I was like, you've got to be freaking kidding me. So it's not just it's the little guys, right? It's not the people on the fringes of the expo hall or whatever. It's the giant organizations and their marketing departments just trying to get things done or hiring third parties to come in and set things up for them. And in the end, what you get is something like this over here, where anybody on the network, because anyone can see anyone, can go in and make changes to it and display whatever it is that their heart desires. Location. So this one was interesting. We noticed a bunch of GPS, within NetWitness, we saw that there was, it was getting flagged as potential GPS data. We took a look, saw what it was, and what it was an application where this individual was, it was a dating app. And so that dating app asks for your location so it could give you people singles in your area. Well, the way that the application knew where you were was by every 15 minutes, it would send your GPS location back to the company that created this application. Now, we just took those GPS coordinates, dropped them into Google, and we could see where this individual moved around while they were, at the conference. So as long as they were connected to our network, which spans, well, not our network, RSA Conference is Mosconi's network, but as long as traffic that we were able to look at, we could see where they were anywhere throughout the conference every 15 minutes. We could also see, because the first time it connected to the network, it beaconed out GPS coordinates for Chicago. So we're like, okay, well then that must be like the last time they used that app, they were in Chicago, then they got here, they got on the network, they fired up the app, it yelled home really quick the last thing it knew, and then continued to beacon out its current location. So now we know where this guy is, and we know that he's from Chicago, we know that he's looking for love. And again, that data is very interesting and useful if you're an attacker, especially if you're targeting somebody from this particular organization, or you're just an opportunist. And let's face it, a lot of attackers are just opportunists. They'll fire everything at everyone, and hopefully something sticks. This is another dating app. It was one specifically for meeting up with people who wanted to have threesomes. And the application would, when this app was communicating back to the main servers, it would sync whatever conversation this person had previously with somebody else. And so you can see there are different names here for these text files, and it did it as text. There's the profile picture right there for the individual, and then and you could go in and read all of the history of this person's discussions with folks about trying to set up threesomes during his travels for work. So we see a lot of insecure dating apps, which is really sensitive information, right? But folks just throw it out there. So things like this, where there's an application, will let the app developers know, hey, your app is doing whatever. We've done that for multiple dating apps. We have 2 that we have had to notify from this conference. And a couple of years ago, we actually did that for Tinder. I don't have the slide up about it. I've talked about it in the past. But what was happening was that we could see all, at least in the case of Tinder, we could see all the profile images. We could tell where somebody was swiping left, swiping right. We couldn't see their account credentials, and we didn't have their username, but we had a unique identifier for that individual. So we could build a profile on them, like, this dude really loves redheads. And so, we let them know, and it was picked by the next time we went to RSA conference a year later. Funnily enough, there was a vendor or something that was at RSA conference that, I want to say it was probably 2 years later, they said, oh, we're the ones who found that. And we informed them. And I said, all right, cool. I have me talking about it on stage somewhere from a year and a half ago, but that's how vendors roll. So dating apps, secure your dating apps, or at least if you are, in the market looking for love, fire up your dating app on your home Wi-Fi and fire up Wireshark and see what it is that it's sending out, because some of it can be pretty interesting. All right, and then in this case, there was an analyst at RSA who he was looking at traffic, and he was like, man, there is this attacker out there, and he's just scanning the network like crazy. We're seeing all these connections to these ports. It's just not very stealthy at all. It is, it's just screening out and trying to connect to everything and doing whatever. And, we're like, will you take a look at this? And we sat down and looked at it. And he's like, I think it's some kind of worm. It's making tons of successful connections, because, again, this is a flat network with no host isolation. So anybody who's on the network could scan anybody else who was out there, or if they had something available to connect to, they could do that. And so I don't know if any of you own a MacBook, but when you connect it to your network, normally it will say, like, hey, let me see if there are any devices out there that are willing to share their drive with me, and I'll just throw that over here so that it's easily accessible. Well, that's what it was doing. It got on the RSA conference network, started looking for shared folders and shared drives, and every time it connected to one, That's one of those little green circles. The big circle is the MacBook. So big circle MacBook, little circles, everyone who allowed it to connect to a shared drive or folder. Good sweet hell. So that's the type of stuff that we're dealing with. Again, like, please, please, please go and look at what your devices are doing. Go take a look at your own traffic at home. Fire up Wireshark, start sniffing it, get on your phone, connect to your home Wi-Fi, and just start going through your apps, figuring out what it is that they're sending out there. Because when you end up at Starbucks or wherever, and you're just hanging out on a regular wireless network, open Wi-Fi network, you never know who else is in the room. Granted, it's probably you guys that the people need to worry about, not the other way around, honestly, right? But you never know what your device is leaking, and you never know what your applications are leaking. And if this type of stuff is interesting to you, maybe go to a Starbucks and take a look around. And that is that. So thanks. Oh, can I clap for me? I'm gonna clap for me. Yay me. Yay me.
Yay. Amazing content. Thank you so much for sharing. I'm going to go ahead and enable the ability for people to ask questions. So if you do have a question, go ahead and push that raise hand button, and we'll go ahead and add you on mic. All right, the first question is from Willick or Wilsey. You are on the air. Perhaps. Well, that looks like it. Oh, there we go. You should be good to go. We'll see. All right, I'm going to pass it on to the next person. Jason Street. Hey, man. Looks like you got a question?
Oh, yes. I was just wondering, it's like, how can you be so awesome in virtual reality as well as real life?
It takes practice. You just really have to be an enormous nerd who just loves this so much. Seriously, I love this so much. I don't know. I mean, like, you know where the raise hand is. Like, raise your hand if this is a blast and you guys are having a great time, because I am having a blast. Like, it's super good to see you guys. Like, but this is really, really, really fun. So thank you, Trenton, and thank you, Sean.
Awesome. Yeah, we're so excited this work. Thanks for bringing good content. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and dismiss questions. I think a bunch of people confuse the raise hand for questions and the emoji raise hand. So we're going to go ahead and dismiss everybody's questions. Give me a second here. All right, they should be clear. If you have an actual question, go ahead and hit that raise hand button. Perfect. All right, next up is Serbo. Serbo, you are on the air.
So, Neil, my friend was wondering what that Swinger app was for science. No, I'm just kidding. Just because I have you on this stage, I was curious on what do you think the chances are that Black Hat would do something like this because of, yes, shoot right in the face. Throw me the microphone. Yes.
So the chances that Black Hat would do something like this, I'm not really sure. So there are clearly ongoing discussions about what the situation is going to be like this summer for both Black Hat and for DEF CON. We, just so everybody knows, we are, yes, shoot me right in the head. We are still planning away like crazy. Like, we are doing all of our CFP reviews. We're doing all the selections. This coming week, we have our network planning meetings with all of the partners and everything. So everything is moving forward in the planning stages, like we're all going to Vegas. Again, we don't know what that reality is actually going to be, but just so you know, we're planning our asses off, and we're still planning to put on super great shows for you guys. And our expectation is that even if it does go off, and everything, we're told we're all allowed to get together again, the attendance will be impacted greatly, but that will not mean that the content will be impacted greatly. We are still getting tons of incredible submissions from people like you guys, and going through all of those and selecting that. All of our selection calls for Black Hat are starting next week for our first round. So I only do the reviews for the network defense, malware, and DFIR tracks. But if you guys are submitting to DEF CON or to Black Hat and you want someone to take a look at your presentation, send it over my way. Just, grifter@blackhat.com or grifter@rootcompromise.org, and I'll take a look at it. What that does mean, if you do ask me for help, is it means I can't vote for that because I will now have had prior knowledge and all whatever, but at least you'll have somebody who's on the review board who will take a look at it for you before you send it into the rest of the folks.
Awesome. All right, we have time for about 2 more questions. Next up is VR Believer. VR Believer, you're on the air.
Cool. Hey, I just wanted to, first of all, say congrats for a really dense, awesome talk. I went to all the Black Hat sessions in the early days, back with Captain Crunch in the 80s and 90s, believe it or not, back before it was really an official regular thing. Anyway, I just wanted to say not only thanks for continuing to do this kind of analysis, but I've been out of it for a while. Is there a standard place that you can go to get the latest stats like the ones you presented? Because I used to be a member of 2600 back in the old days. I'm just wondering what the latest place to go is.
Yeah, so honestly, from a conference standpoint, and the things that all of the talks that are posted online shortly after the conferences are over, if you want to know what took place on network, from a network standpoint and what was going on show to show, this type of content, there's more stats about the architecture of that and all whatever. After each Black Hat show, I'll do a debrief about the network. So
I just meant things like percentage of encrypted traffic, some of the stats you had over time, so you can see historical. Is that just somewhere on the web? I just haven't looked for it. Or?
No, I haven't created that, at least in regards to Black Hat. As over time, here's what we have seen. Like I said, for us, it's improving, and it is a 5% growth year over year. But I haven't never put together a timeline, and maybe I should. It makes me think maybe I should. Thanks.
Awesome. One more question, Tom. You are on the air.
Yes. Can you hear me?
We can.
Yeah.
Oh, you can. Good. My question was basically the best way to describe it is that I think this stuff has to become easy or easier. And so, for instance, of virtual machines or let's encrypt certificates, security can't cost $190 and require a guy with 6 years of experience, or people can't get it to work. I mean, I have my own server. I managed to get my email server now is encrypted. But for the longest time, I was in charge of it, and it wasn't. So it's just well, that's not my primary job. So, at some point I sat down and tried to figure out how to do it.
Well, and that's the thing is, it's there comes a certain responsibility with hosting, a web host or email hosting or doing whatever. If you decide to put something online, you are taking on that responsibility, and almost to a legal point, you can be held liable for making sure that information is secure. So there are significantly more things that we can do around open source things like you mentioned. Let's encrypt and that kind of stuff. So there are major improvements in the last decade or so that allow the average individual to do security for cheap or free. And so I think the this is just too expensive is it's kind of a hard excuse to have, especially if you're a giant corporation. I can tell you from experience, from my incident response experience, that what is security itself isn't expensive. A breach is expensive. And so it's better to just pay the money up front. It may seem like it's a lot of money, but in the end, paying to clean up the mess, paying for the lawyers, paying for all of the, all the things that you need to give to the individuals who are infected, that is what is expensive.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Everybody, can we have one more round of applause for Grifter?
Yay. I'm going to give you guys some finger guns.
I'm amazed that he did that whole presentation in VR. That is spectacular. To control
I did.
slides in a VR headset.
Yeah, the headset was on the whole time, and I was just mashing my phone on my desk right here to try to advance the slides. So.
Major bonus points, man. Well done. All right, we're going to go ahead and get ready for the next talk in about